First up on the list is Churchill, and this comes out today, the day the podcast is being released. It stars Brian Cox, it's got Miranda, Richardson, it's got, a moderately big cast. James Purefoy as well, our favourite Edward the Black Prince from A Knight's Tale.
Large.
He's playing King George VI, most recently won Colin Firth an Oscar, of course, in the King's Speech. Yeah, exactly, and they're covering the same sort of period of time. This is set in 1944, and it is something like 6 days before the D-Day landings launch. Operation Overlord, it's called. So the Joint Chiefs of Staff have planned this huge dropping off of troops in the beaches of Normandy in France so that you can land all these troops and take the war to Germany, to Hitler, and we'll defeat him that way. And of course, if you know history, which I don't, I'm saying this because I looked it up before doing the show, then they were hugely significant, right? Not long after that, the war was concluded, in 1945, I think it was, but obviously it had been rumbling on for quite some time before then. And Churchill was still Prime Minister of England at that time. He led his party until the age of 80, I think, so it was in his much later years, and he was involved in military actions and in political actions, in PR, as you were saying there, Phil, all kinds of things. This film purports to go through Churchill's experiences before D-Day, and the key thing they do, which has been roundly battered by historians, is suggest that a week before these plans were due to happen, he was dead against it and tried to stop it from happening, all because he was tortured at the memory of Gallipoli, which was another water landing in the First World War in which countless numbers of young men lost their lives. And the idea is that he's so troubled by this, he wants to try and stop D-Day happening like that at any cost and come up with another solution which involved invading Bordeaux and Italy and all that sort of stuff. So here's a clip of Brian Cox playing Winston Churchill, talking to Miranda Richardson, who is playing his wife Clementine, and you can hear the way that they decided to play Churchill. Here we go.
Margaret's holding a dinner afterwards. Ike spoke to you, didn't he?
I ran this country and this war for more than 2 years before these Americans even turned up. Yet, it's as if my experience, my knowledge of warfare counted for nothing.
Sure, Ike has a great deal of experience of warfare. Maybe you should listen to him.
Is everyone to overrule everything I say? The king appointed me prime minister of this country, and it's my duty to lead them through this war.
Don't assume you're the only one capable of making decisions.
Is this about the war? Or is it about you and me?
Do you want to be coddled, Winston?
I'd settle for some respect.
Then don't complain when someone tells you the truth.
Yeah, there we go. So, I mean, in a sentence, if you would like to see someone imagine Churchill as a spoilt, patronised child, then watch this film. You'll have a whale of a time. That scene is repeated for the film's 2+ hour runtime in almost every other context you can imagine. Nothing more and nothing less gets said other than Winston Churchill, Brian Cox, blustering about saying, "I used to be important. Does no one care that I used to run the war? Why can't you let me have a say in things?" And everyone else around him patronising and saying, "Come now, Churchill, take your pills. Just stand at the front of millions of people and make your speech, and then why not go back to bed? And, I know, Churchill, I know that you used to be someone important, but let's just leave the war to the people who know what they're doing, okay?" And then they say amongst each other, "Well, just let him talk to the troops and let him feel like he's involved a little bit. We need to make sure he's happy as well." And in between that, Churchill shouts at everybody. He hates everyone. He has racked with self-doubt. He concocts ridiculous plans that are loosely based on truth. And he makes himself out to be, in this film, the most pathetic excuse for a prime minister that maybe the world has ever seen. And it doesn't help that there's apparently almost no budget in this production, so you very rarely see any crowds. You see absolutely none of Churchill's political work. Let's not forget he was prime minister of the country. Apparently all Churchill did in the war was mope around massive empty rooms in his own house trying to get in on these military meetings, and the rest of the time was just on his own feeling sad. It's as if he didn't have a country to run. All he did was try and make his voice heard at military meetings. And what's got to be said is that the writer for this is apparently some kind of historian. She's Alex von Tunzelmann, and she has admitted that she has changed certain elements of the story to suit her own dramatic needs. In particular, she has been slammed by a Churchill biographer called Andrew Roberts, and I really encourage you to look up his thoughts on the subject. He says she gets nearly every single thing wrong, and no one can understand why someone has taken it upon themselves to paint such a miserable, derogatory portrait of someone who means so much to so very many people. And I want to say, Phil, before you jump in, I'm all for history being told as it was, but this is self-admittedly a distortion of history for some unknown purpose. Phil, your guess is as good as mine. I hated it. Other than all that sort of stuff aside, it's a terrible film to watch because it's boring in one note. It's so slow. Scenes are drawn out interminably. The performance from Brian Cox would be good if he had anything to work with in the script. As it is, he just shouts and spouts rubbish, and he comes across like an old guy who is annoyed that no one pays him any attention. It's so annoying to watch. You got no sympathy for anybody. The music is omnipresent and depressing and plodding and boring. There's those kind of endless, monotonous piano things that sound like they're written by Ludovico Einaudi, and there's slow strings. Everything is in this sort of sepia tint. There's some nice focus work and some nice shot construction, but the whole thing is just dreadful. So it gets a D from me. If I could give it an F, I'd give it an F.
Wow. Okay. I could get a sense that you really don't like it, but what do you think it's trying to achieve?
The only thing I can think is that whoever this writer is, this historian, is that she's got some kind of agenda. She wants people to think that Churchill wasn't the great man he was. Perhaps they want us to see that he was nothing but a figurehead, and it was only the people around Churchill who had any sort of contribution at all. There's this really terrible moment where, having belittled him, and he has shown himself to be, useless, basically, at the end, he makes a speech to people just before D-Day, and then everyone applauds, and everyone's roused by it. But it's the most hollow feeling I've had to the end of a film ever, because I just don't get it. If Churchill is the way that he's portrayed, then those speeches are worse than meaningless. They're worthless. And is there a person among us who wants to see that? No, I don't think so. Phil, is that too much?
I'm just getting your very strong emotions about it, but maybe this is the sense that lots of people have had in reaction to this film. So maybe it's quite authentic reaction to it. The
thing I can't really forgive, and it's a problem I have with historical dramas full stop, and we need to talk about it at some point, is that it has the sort of white texty stuff, and all of the trappings of it try to present it as if this historian has had access to Churchill's own personal diaries, or was there seeing the real story, giving us the real story behind the man.
And you think it's a complete load of rubbish?
Well, I just think it seems unforgivable to me. Honestly, I don't get it. I don't like it. I really want to know whether I'm an idiot. I'm not a Churchill biographer. I've had to go completely by what I've been able to find out and read. But I admit, even without knowing anything, something seemed off to me.
It didn't sit well.
No, it's the same scene over and over again. It's dreadful.
A bad film and bad themes and ideas.
No surprise, the embargo was held until the day of release. Let's put it that way.
Okay.